Hi, I'm here with Elle Benfield, who is a conceptual creative and designer at Mighty Social, and I'll be asking her a few questions about her job in the marketing industry. So, Elle, the first question, of course, I always start with is, how have you got to where you are today?
Yeah, that's a big old question to start with. So I went to Norwich University of the Arts. I actually studied animation for 3 years. Yeah, it was a great course to be on. I'd recommend if anyone wants to look into going towards the motion graphics sector, it's great. Gained a lot of valuable skills from there. Once leaving, obviously wanted to get straight into the work environment. As you do, it's a very competitive industry, so there is some struggles. I actually moved into teaching for a little while in between. So I was actually teaching media to primary school kids. Again, another really insightful experience, gained a lot of skills. From there, I was very keen to get into the marketing industry. Like a lot of us, we're all on our phones, we're all on social media. It is a platform where you're constantly, you're social without even realizing. So yeah, I actually joined a agency to help me look to move into that marketing area. So they, very fortunately, they said, oh, Mighty Social are recruiting, I'd like to put you forward for an intern position. Yeah. Which was obviously, for someone trying to get a foot in the door, was amazing. So she put that role forward to me, and yeah, the process sort of started from there.
Okay, nice. So would you say it was anything specific like that pushed you towards choosing marketing, or like did you just choose the industry from your passion?
So for me, I loved doing animation, and originally I actually wanted to move more into the film and movie sector of the industry. But when I left, I realized my passions had changed slightly. I much preferred the sort of graphic side and typography and towards that way. So as soon as I realized that my passion had shifted slightly, I then sort of delved a bit deeper of, okay, what do I actually like to do within this? So there's so many different pathways you can go with it. But for me, I'm a very, like I said earlier, I'm very sociable. I'm constantly on my phone, looking at different trends, keeping up to date with all the different platforms, formats. So I realized there was something within that I think I would excel at. So yeah, I pushed more towards that. And as soon as I realized it, yeah, it sort of all fell into place.
Okay, cool. So you talk about how it was your passion, and would you say like, just sort of like the fact that it was so social is what motivated you to go into work every day?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, as we all know, I was with Mighty Social, I think, for 5 months before the pandemic hit. So already in that, there was a shift in sort of the social side of moving online, whereas in person collaborating. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of tests within still being able to reach people, but through a different medium. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it took like some time to acclimatize to.
Yeah, I think for everyone, like having that sort of dynamic change, all of a sudden, everyone had to adapt very quickly. So for me and my company, we adapted very well, but within the company, we're all very sociable, and yeah, it just happened very naturally for us.
That's very nice. Then. So I'm sure every day looks different, but what would you say a day in your role like typically looks like?
Okay, gosh. So a day in the life of me. So as most creatives do, I sort of just check and see what sort of briefs from clients are due for that week or even on the day. For myself and the clientele that I have, we're within so many different sectors, whether that's from fashion to toys to furniture, etc. So for me, it is very much sort of being switched on, going towards that design side, meeting with different clients. For now, we are having a shift between being in the office and at home as well. So a lot of day-to-day meetings is when we can be in the office, like today. So it can change. Mm-hmm. I mean, especially with trends, like trends are changing daily. So for us, it's very much being switched on and seeing if there's something reactive. Okay, let's get that done today. Or if there's something more long-term as a project, then there's a lot of meetings towards, okay, or brainstorms of, okay, how can we best reach people with this? So yeah, it's ever changing for me.
Okay, so I'm sure you've had different pathways, as you mentioned. What would you say your career aspirations are?
So my career aspirations to begin with are actually the role that I'm in currently, which is amazing. I'm very grateful for that. I'm sort of in a position now where, again, I'm trying to figure out what pathway I now want to go into. For myself, I very much still enjoy the creative side, but I also have moved more into a leadership role. So whether that's more taking on a senior management role or in a more directing side, I'm still kind of figuring that out. But yeah, it's an exciting time, especially, yeah, once you're in the role, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, in your role, do you feel like you can say that you're making a change, you're making a difference to people?
Yeah, no, absolutely. For myself, it's, I mean, like I said, with trends and social topics changing ever so often, I mean, as we saw last year, there was the Black Lives Matter, which was, I mean, for us and for everyone, was a pivotal moment of change. And thankfully, we were able to speak with clients and say, you need to be more vocal about this. You need to show equality amongst others. And for us as a company, we felt empowered to reach people with that messaging also. And it's something that even before that we was pushing amongst everyone. I mean, I think it's so important for not only ourselves, but for others to encourage people to be more talking more freely and not be constrained with these views.
Yeah, definitely agree. Especially with the time that we're in now, where people should like be much more connected because of the pandemic and all. Definitely will agree. Okay, so would you say your role is as you expected to be when you first started?
I think it's a really hard question to answer. I mean, for anyone with any role, any position, you don't know what to expect. I mean, you can ask the questions and people will answer, but until you're actually in those shoes and sitting and doing that job, it's very hard to say. I mean, for me, I was unsure at the beginning of what sort of, whether I'd be sort of stuck in the deep end of, okay, you need to do X, Y, Z. But as the time went on, you pick up more skill sets, you then gain more experience towards other things. So yes and no to that, yeah.
Okay, fair. So, of course, the pandemic was one challenge that a lot of people had to overcome. What would you say was the biggest challenge that you had to overcome in your workplace?
So in our workplace, I mean, speaking for myself and maybe as the company, for us, it was probably, like I said earlier, we are very much a collaborative organisation. So for that to shift and then be, as we all are, sort of sat behind our screens, not really talking to anyone throughout the day other than like this.
Yeah.
It was hard to begin with, but with us, we found that if we were able to set up meetings regularly, make sure that communication's open, whether that was sort of personal issues or within the workplace, we were able to express those freely, which I'm so grateful for. As we all know, during that time, it was so hard for everyone to sort of just adapt. I mean, for myself, I was in a position where I didn't have an office space at home. So I was sort of carrying my laptop around to whatever room I could. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was more having that environment to be able to work and keep my home life separate.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, fair. So the final question is, what advice would you give to a young student that's trying to go into the same role that you're in right now?
It's going to sound really corny, but my word of advice is don't give up. There was a lot of times, especially whilst I was teaching, I'm very grateful I had that experience, but throughout that time I was very close to, you know what, it's not going to happen. I mean, during that time, I think it was a year before I actually got into this role. So you come up with all sorts of questions. Okay, well, maybe it's, I mean, especially once you've left uni, you hear of all these stories of I got straight into work after I left, or people that don't really know what they want to do after university either. So for me, it's more ask yourself the questions of, okay, what am I good at? What do I want to test myself with? What challenges do I want to face? And then really sort of sit down and do your research into companies as well. I was quite naive at the beginning, going into these interviews of, okay, I know exactly what I'm doing, what I'm talking about. Sometimes honesty is the best policy as well. Like, I went into my interview with Mighty Social and I said, these are my skill sets, this is what I'm passionate about, but then also be open to, I want to learn, I'm eager to learn. I think if you're like that with an interviewer, they're gonna really appreciate that as well, because they don't want to take someone on that's not going to want those qualities. So yeah, no, for me, yeah, don't give up.
Give up.
So
perfect. Thank you so much for doing this, Elle.
No.
So that's a lovely way to like sum up your job, your role, and of course it'll teach a lot of students about how they can like improve and how they can like lead their way into going into this role. So thank you very much for doing this. Thank you.
No, it's all good. Thank you so much. If there is anything else I can do for you, let me know.
Pleasure. Bye-bye. Thank you.